Hello and welcome back to the Co-Treat.
Hi.
I'm Jonathan, your occupational therapy practitioner today.
Why do you always switch the name?
Well, what do you want me to
You
say?
said practitioner that time. You normally say professional.
Sometimes I say clinician.
Anyway,
Sometimes I say...
hi. I'm Magnolia, our speech person today.
Love.
Love it.
And we're back.
We are.
So fun updates on life. We didn't mean to take a long break, but life got really busy and, it happens. So we're here now.
Here we are.
We did it. Fun, actually, really cool fun update for me. As you guys know, I am in college. Some might say university.
Some might just say he's at school in college.
That's true.
In a normal accent.
Some might say that. I've been doing a British accent this morning, which isn't good.
It's rough.
Which isn't good.
No.
But anyway, but I'm officially done with all of my didactic learning.
Yeah, once you finish that assignment today.
No, it's not an assignment. Well, it kind of, it's it's fine.
I'm just throwing you.
I'm done.
Bus. We just now started, and I'm yeah, look.
It's everything's fine. Okay. We're done. I'm done.
Yeah,
it's done. School is done.
Right.
Except for field work. So that's exciting.
It's exciting.
I'm really
sad.
excited.
I'm glad you're excited. I'm sad.
It is. Well,
talk about it.
Tell me why you're sad.
No, I'm not going to tell you why you're sad. Why I'm sad.
Would you like to talk about it?
No, I do not want to talk about it.
I'll tell you. Because what that means for us, our working relationship as co-workers is coming to a close, unfortunately.
It's very sad.
How sad. I have to leave my place of work to go to field work. But that's okay, because we'll still have the podcast.
We will.
To stay connected. And also we're just friends, so there's that too. We're already planning things next year to stay connected. Oh my gosh, what is happening? Up. I just realized Google is listening to us talk and is what is it called? Annotating this whole conversation. I didn't even know it would do that. When did that happen? Okay, embarrassing.
Also, another fun announcement though is I'm sitting in the presence of someone who won an OTA Excellence Award, right?
Oh, yeah.
We didn't talk about that.
Did we?
No, not yet.
Oh. I feel weird.
Look at you not wanting to talk about yourself now.
Listen, I feel weird and I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful and I feel very honored and appreciative. The award that she is referring to is Alabama's State OT Association awarded me the OTA Award of Excellence this year. Which was a complete and total surprise. I was very much not expecting it. I have a really goofy picture of me looking like a little baby. Like
Christmas morning.
It was, yeah, it was really wild. It was very surprising and I'm very thankful and very honored and very humbled. And I totally still feel like I don't deserve it, but it was really great. It was really awesome.
There's plenty of people who would say you deserve it.
Well, I hope one day I can, Anyway, I don't know. I don't know how.
OTR Excellence Award.
That's true.
You have to work hard.
That's true. Listen, we'll see. That's the goal. I mean, the goal is not to win an award. The goal is to I was never gonna on my bingo card of life. But yeah, it was very sweet.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about it now.
Well, sorry.
I feel really awkward.
You're the one who has it hanging on their wall. And it reminded me
Would you rather me stick it in a drawer?
No, I want it hanging on the wall. You should be proud of it.
I am proud. I'm very proud and very honored.
So he's almost done with schoolwork.
Almost done. Almost done completely. I only have field work left. And then...
your assignment today.
It's done. It's basically done. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Anyway.
It'll be done in about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But podcasting. Podcast is life. That's what people say, right?
No, I don't think anyone says that, but let's get started.
Okay, so we have decided, over our, what we've talked about so far on our little podcast, there are some topics that are just like good to cover. We kind of hint on basically every session, kind of these like little miscellaneous like tips and tricks, little bits and bobs of things to bring into sessions and like ideas or concepts or, different, I don't know, just different techniques and stuff.
Like our treatment styles. I think people kind of get a glimpse of our treatment styles from all of our other sessions we've had on here.
Yeah.
But we've not like explicitly talked about what little things we do.
Yeah. And some of these things are things that like are, in my brain, it's like these are kind of things that are oftentimes hard to write down. They're hard to put in a book or like put somewhere tangible, but they're things that like people who are really proficient, like I learn a lot of these things from other clinicians who are very proficient. And I'm like, wow, that was really cool. It was really awesome how they did that thing. I want to try to emulate that and like practice those skills so that I can be like that.
So the things we're going to talk about today are more like clinician skills.
Yes.
Not things that we learned per se, like from books when we were students.
And some of them like are it's definitely concepts that like I learned some of these concepts in like OTA school, like the first one that I have written down, right?
Like it's in the literature for things, but it's hard when you read it to like picture what it is.
Yeah, to actually understand what it's talking about. Because it definitely it's one of those things, like we were talking about this last night, how some of the skills that we admire about some of the people that us personally find so incredible.
Yeah.
Are those skills that are hard to like define.
Right.
They're like hard to describe. It's like this person just like has it. Like something, it.
Skills that you can't master from just reading about it.
Yeah.
You have to practice it and develop it.
So we're going to try to define it a little bit. With
try our best. With some examples.
Yeah, with some examples.
And I think that'll help because we're clinicians. Wow, I could barely pronounce that this morning. Yeah. But we have practiced it, I think. Developed it as much as possible.
There's always room to grow. Always things to...
I haven't developed it till now.
Yeah, that's
We've
true.
grown a lot.
For sure.
Last night we had lots of conversations about kind of just like our own growth and what all we've seen, like you mentioned. And I think that was a good moment of like reflection. So now we can kind of talk about what all we've learned and developed in ourselves.
It was fun. Not to give Magnolia too much praise, but I gave
you praise earlier.
I know. But we were like in our conversations last night, really, I'm so much better as a clinician because of you, Magnolia, my friend. Because of all those things that we talked about last night, talking about like just her approach and watching her do her thing. It's really, that's why like I find it so important to have people around that are really surrounding yourself or trying to like, befriend or become close with clinicians that you find are really have skills that you don't have or have skills that you wish that you had or do things that you're like, wow, this is really cool because it makes you better. And like, I am so much better for all of the people that I have worked with, who are really incredible clinicians. And like, it's so like, for instance, our friend Leah, who we've mentioned on the pod before.
Yeah.
She was so influential in me. Speaking of our first topic, we'll just jump. We'll skip a little. We'll skip.
I know where we're going. It's fine.
What is it?
We're going to talk about the pause.
The pause. Yay. Leah's so good at the pause.
And she was one of my CF supervisors too. So I got a lot of time with her.
Yeah, she's and Leah, like is a speech therapist, obviously, because she was your CF supervisor. And she was so good at the pause.
She was.
And I know we mentioned the pause before, but would you explain it a little bit more?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, and go.
I was pausing.
Oh, I was like, what's happening here?
Pausing.
This was not an appropriate, that was just awkward. This is not an appropriate time to use the pause.
Giving an example of how not to do it. That's the type of thing we need, like, videoed.
That was ridiculous. I was like, okay, and when's she gonna start?
I wish I could have seen his face. He was literally looking at me like, okay, say something. He was like, help me.
It's like, okay, am I supposed to take over here or like what?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so
tell me about the pause.
I'm going to start by talking about what the pause is not.
Oh,
I mean, because the pause is the absence of something.
The pause being Pause, not like kitty cat pause, just for clarification.
Thank you. So, pause is absence of something if you really think about it. It's the absence of talking and movement and things. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I think that's a good definition.
I'm following you. Yeah.
You looked confused. I was
I'm processing. I'm here with you. I haven't thought about it that way, but yeah.
I mean, how else would you describe it? Anyway, so it just kind of the absence of talking a lot and feeling the moment. It's about kind of leaving room and space for your patient to be able to either process what's going on or to like provide communication opportunities in that moment. This is where I like to talk about sometimes like uncomfortableness in that silence, because it takes a really long time to kind of get comfortable being okay to like just pause and let it happen.
Yeah.
So that's really like the definition to most simple form. But typically it's used, especially with like our language patients or our like communication and even like in play, things like that. You would use a pause to kind of wait and see, like, is the patient going to repeat the model that I just did? Are they going to just spontaneously use words and sounds right now in play? Are they going to repeat the actions I just did? And just kind of giving them that time and space to see if they do it on their own. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it kind of promotes children kind of doing things independently or kind of imitatively without you kind of forcing it.
Yeah.
Which really helps their development on their own.
Yeah.
Because they need to be able to see that, oh yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just something so simple as moving the car after you do or something like that.
Yeah. And like to give some examples I think about people who have infants, people who, and this is true for like parents, clinicians, whoever, people who play with infants, you'll see videos of those people on the internet or the teachers or the whoever, and they'll like do some super silly face and sing some super silly song and then get quiet.
Yeah.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And they'll like wait. They'll leave that open space. And that is a really great example of the pause where you're setting up the communication attempt or that like interaction situation. And then you wait for the child to respond in some capacity, whatever that means.
So like those songs and rhymes are like what we call kind of like verbal routines for us. So like ready, set, go is a big verbal routine. And so what you want to do a lot of times with something like that, if you're promoting like language development, would be model that routine a lot. You're not going to expect your child to repeat it after you the first few times. So model it a lot and a lot. And then I'm going to start kind of fading it away, but adding a pause to it. So I'm going to be ready, set, go, ready, set, go, ready, set, go every time we go down the slide. And then like the next time I might go ready, set, and then pause. But then here comes the next part of you kind of watch the child and see if they look like they're showing that intent of they may say something. But if they don't and they're starting to get frustrated by the activity, you want to go ahead and just say go and slide down. Because the point of the pause is not to add frustration.
Yeah.
That's a big component of it. The point of the pause is to add the time for the patient or your child to be able to like communicate with you in that moment, but before getting frustrated.
Yeah.
You still want to be able to complete the activity.
And a very important part of the pause is being attentive.
Yes.
Like you're not ignoring the kiddo when that happens. Like you're not like setting it up and then like turning your attention away. Like you are looking at them, hopefully with the intention of like, they are recognizing, oh, this person is like seeking something from me. They're like, there is some sort of a social intention between this interaction with this person.
Yeah.
And it's true not only for like communication, but this is something that I have like incorporated into even when we're doing like motor practice for like different types of skills or whatever, where it's like, I model and I do a lot of modeling with whatever it is. Maybe we're modeling like, early like pre-writing activities, or we're like doing some sort of construction play and we're building with little blocks and I'm modeling it up. And then I wait and like let the kiddo try. Like if they're then engaging with whatever it is that we're playing with, I let them have their space to attempt rather than just immediately jumping in and like trying to help them.
Yeah.
And like giving them space to practice and giving them space to like have some time to initiate it on their own.
Right.
Because it's really kind of amazing. And people have the best of intentions a lot of the time, right? Like all the time, people will like bombard kids they'll bombard them with help, or they'll bombard them with like words, and they're just like, it's a constant flow of interaction from the adult to the kid. And they forget to like turn the tap off a little bit.
Yeah.
And just slow down and let the kid have some time to process what is happening.
Yeah.
And then respond. Because their little brains are working overtime. And so they've got a lot to filter through. So you just have to slow it down sometimes.
I think we forget that they need that time to process.
Yeah.
Because we just start adding more and more, like you said.
Yeah.
But it's also important, after they're processing, what you're saying too, is to like accept how the kid responds after the pause.
Okay.
Too.
Yeah.
And by that, what I mean, I'm going to go back to like my ready, set, go example. So if I'm doing like ready, set, and then I pause, if the child even like just looks at me and like shows that like joint attention, I'm like, oh yeah, we're both here. We both know I want to slide. Like, okay, yeah, that was your interaction with me. Your communication was looking at me. So I'm going to fill it in now and say, go, and we slide.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's even they touch a picture, they use AAC or something like that. Maybe they sign go. However they do it is fine. Like multi-modalities are totally fine for however they say go or indicate that they want to go.
Yeah.
You want to make sure to lean into that. Even if they point down the slide, you want to lean into that.
Yeah.
Because they're showing engagement in that activity, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you use the pause not to get exactly what you want, but to see what the kid's going to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what the kid's going to do.
Yeah.
And so like we use it to see how are they going to communicate with me in the speech world. Then once we see it, we can model the word for them again and indicate, oh, I understood you. Thank you for communicating with me. You pointed down the slide, so I'm going to model for you. Go. We go down the slide. And maybe after about 10 or 15 more times doing that, who knows? They may point and say, go the next time. You just got to keep having it fun, keep a positive experience with that after watching the kid and then accepting what they do after the pause.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Absolutely.
One thing not to do, though, which is really hard, is do not fill the pause with your own words. In that moment, it would be like if I said ready, set, and I'm like waiting, start going, say go, say go.
Sure.
Say go, go. What do you want to do? Do you want to go down the slide? Where are we going to go? Like, it's way too much in that moment.
Yeah.
The best case scenario would be just model go for them.
Yeah.
And help them go down the slide. Because then they're only having to process one word with the one activity they're doing. They're able to pair those things together. Yeah. And then it makes sense to them.
Yeah.
Instead of them having to process all the questions you're saying and like the tone in your voice that may be changing, the rise of your volume that might be changing, like all these other things, trying to pick up on your social cues. And then like you're adding demand on them of like what you want them to do. It just becomes a lot on a patient for your child.
And I think about it too, like not just with the youngest of kids, because I think that's where like a lot of the examples that, you've talked about and we've just talked about are for like many of our younger kiddos who are in those very early language development stages. But even some of our kids who are older, who have some like processing challenges where they may have good language, but it takes them a while to kind of understand what you're asking. Or like I have one kiddo comes to mind who is older but he struggles to like answer some of those like probing questions. Like if you ask him what he wants to do, or if you ask him what he, like what's the next step of this activity? Like it takes him a little bit to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes them like an uncomfortably long time. Like can be a little bit awkward to like sit there and wait 10 seconds for him to like think through what he wants to say. But then he will. Mm-hmm. And you just have to like leave space for him to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's important too. And also just kind of jumping away from kids for a minute. Mm-hmm. This is also a very common practice and a very important practice for like specifically people with like dementia mm-hmm. who need longer time to process, because the idea is throughout all of it, the main idea is you're allowing space and time for the individual who you are talking with and communicating with and interacting with to process what is happening.
Right.
And to formulate a response. Mm-hmm. That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
No matter what it looks like, no matter what age, mm-hmm. that's the whole idea. It's making sure you're you're leaving room for people to process what's happening.
Yeah.
And so
that's actually, I kind of first learned about this like in grad school and like first practiced it with like aphasia patients. So like mm-hmm. post stroke patients. And it was really important learning that pause, because I could ask one question and then I needed to be able to wait possibly even 20 seconds in order for them to be able to process the question, find the word they wanted to find, and then answer it. Because it takes a lot of steps. And if I would have, the way my professor like described it, if I would have added more words, like if I would have added more verbal output for mm-hmm. them to like have to process, that's just more words for them to have to like kind of sort through in their head.
Yeah.
Because words, in their brain are like categorizing, or they're changing, or they can't find the right word they want, or they may say it wrong. There's just too many moving parts cognitively after strokes. And it's just like, you don't want to add that extra frustration for them.
Yeah.
You want to be able to wait and see, what are they going to say? Because they may not say the right word to you, but then you can help find a connection from the word they do say. If that makes sense.
For sure. And I think it's really important to highlight, as someone who is not a speech mm-hmm. therapy clinician, I think it's very important to highlight how valuable and how essential having these skills are for people, mm-hmm. for everyone.
Yes.
Because I know that oftentimes, speech people are the masters of communication, right? Like that's their whole thing.
Right.
And so obviously they are like far more proficient at a lot of these things than the rest of us. But it is so important and so vital for us to have an understanding, those of us who are not in that world, so that we can communicate with our clients and with our kiddos and with our adults, whoever it is that we're working with, mm-hmm. or parents who are working with their kids, or, aunts and uncles or grandparents, or whoever is interacting with whoever, to have these skills, because it truly changes a person's experience with you. Mm-hmm. And for instance, there have been many times, because I have practiced these skills because of amazing, and I learned them from amazing speech therapists. Mm-hmm. And because I practiced these skills, there have been several times that some kids have said their first words with me mm-hmm. and not with the speech person. And that's not, I'm not trying to make that like a brag,
right?
But it just shows that it's so important for everyone in the team mm-hmm. to be practicing these skills,
right?
Because it could be that people have breakthroughs, or that they have these really important moments with people that may be a little bit unexpected.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And obviously these are the same skills that we want parents and guardians and whoever to learn. Us specifically in our field want those people to learn. And it's much easier if everyone's kind of doing the same thing and on the same page.
Yeah. And this is a skill that I feel very strongly about. And I feel like I do advocate for my patients a lot, and even just the patients I see in the clinic when they're with other clinicians. I feel kind of the need to sometimes step up and be like, hey, we're saying too much.
Yeah.
In the nicest way possible. And I think it's okay to advocate for our patients, because as speech people, this is our expertise. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's okay to step up and be like, hey, can we take down a little bit how much verbal output you're giving the patient, just to help with their success.
Yeah.
Whether it's a PT session or an OT session or anything like that, Especially with things that involve like directions and stuff, like verbal directions.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, can we just like come up with ways to simplify it? Or you say what you want and then pause, see if they get it. And then if not, add some your cueing and stuff then.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously they're not working on speech, but if you have someone who has like speech processing disorders and things like that, you're going to want to be able to advocate for them to other disciplines as well, so that they understand like, hey, you may need to slow it down a little bit or even pause to let them process or pause to see how they respond, things like that.
Yeah. And one thing that is kind of coming to my brain too is like the pauses. I also use it for kiddos with like attention challenges. I use these same kinds of concepts because kiddos who struggle with like shifting their focus from one thing to another, or they struggle like because they have some trouble with attending with their attention, then it takes them longer to process instructions. So even if like they have very good language skills, like they can have a full conversation with you. If I give them a direction or maybe even like a couple of directions, sometimes they don't always respond right away. And they may like, you know, we may be playing with a little toy and you're like, okay, like it's time let's play this new game. But they have to, in their brain, they have to finish up what they're doing. And so it takes them a little bit longer to like respond to what you said because their brain is focused on something else. They heard it and they'll get there. Sometimes they just have, they completely lose it. Sometimes it's in one ear and like gets jumbled in the mess and or in the noise and then like, you know, but there have been so many times when like I do try to just give them a moment and they hear it and then they finish up what they're doing. We put it away, whatever. And it's so many other examples too, where it's like they just need an extra minute to like consider.
Yeah.
So,
and there's good benefit even with like feeding therapy and things like that. I could see a good benefit with like pausing and giving space. So like whether you're trying a new food, things like that, pausing to see like how is the kid going to react to this moment versus you putting your words out there.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Same with like kiddos. We've talked a lot about like regulation, like emotional regulation and stuff. If a kid is going through a moment of trying to regulate themselves, that's a good time to be pausing, kind of seeing how they're doing, what they need, kind of reading the situation and then adding input.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I feel like this is all kind of like concepts that we've also written down on our little list. It's kind of bleeding into some of these other things. Like one of the other things that we were going to chat about was like responding versus reacting.
Yeah.
So being really intentional about what's happening, like being aware of what's happening, reading the cues and the signals of the situation, of the child, of the person, whoever it is, and really formulating an intentional response versus reacting to what's happening. And so in those kinds of situations where it is, you know, like a big emotional moment or there's some sort of like distress happening, we do want to be very careful with our communication and our interaction so that we aren't adding fuel to an already burning fire, and we're making sure that we are intentionally responding by taking those pauses.
Yeah.
To like, I mean, as long as the kiddo is not in immediate danger and you don't need to like snatch them up, otherwise they're gonna like get really hurt or like hurt somebody else or something, like, you know, as long as we're in those instances, please like make sure that they are very safe. Like do that. But otherwise, like take a second, take a beat to observe what's happening, recognize the situation, and then formulate an intentional response.
Yeah.
Versus like reacting so, you know, very quickly. And we talked about, we all have seen the videos of like, and we all have seen it in our personal lives probably, where like a little baby's walking and they like bump into something and they fall over and they don't immediately start crying. And they maybe, like I was telling you earlier, like of an example of a little kiddo who like fell and immediately looked at their parents.
Yeah.
Like looked to see what their parents were going to do. This is the kiddo's less than 2.
Yeah.
Like immediately looked at their parent, and the parents very lovingly responded of like, oh no, like, did you get hurt? Oh no. Like, are you okay? And then kiddo like began to cry. And so like kid very much they reacted to their parents' reaction to the situation.
Yeah.
Where it's like the parents were being so sweet and so kind and so precious, and so loving. But their reaction like stirred this emotional response from the kid.
Yeah.
And so it's just a good example of like responding, of being intentional. And like, if we had just taken a pause, took a second to like watch what the kiddo's doing, see what their actual feeling is. If they're really hurt, then like, of course, step in, comfort, and like do whatever. Even if they're not hurt, if they are scared, or if they are like,
validate their feelings.
Exactly.
Every way.
Validate the feelings and like step in. But otherwise, you know, like sometimes it's really good to take a second and take stock of the situation and just like take a moment to respond.
Yeah, and decide how you want to respond, like intentionally.
Yeah.
So that it's not a reaction.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great segue from the pause of like, because I was kind of mentioning it earlier too, of like when you're doing a pause, you need to be able to watch your child or your patient kind of see how they're doing. And then whenever they do whatever they do, that's your time, your chance. Are you going to react to what they do?
Yeah.
Or are you going to respond to what they do?
Yeah.
So taking it back to like my ready, set, go thing, if the kid says something completely not what I was planning to do, if they yell stop, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to react and be like, no, you're supposed to say go, like immediately? Like, that is not helping anyone in the situation, because our goal is for the child to be talking. So like, we've got a word going. So like, that's awesome. But if I could just think about what the patient said, realized, oh, they did say a word. They advocated for themselves. They want to stop. I would need to respond to that word and be like, okay, stop. And then just remove the child off the slide. Like, I understand you. Yeah, we're going to stop. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then if they point back to the slide, okay, we can do ready, set, go again and try it again.
Yeah.
Very simple form of like how you could react versus responding to what is happening.
Yeah, for sure. And I think about like situations too, like now I'm just thinking about like my kiddos, the big feelings and how it can be very hard to like respond in those situations.
Which we talked a lot about in Zones of Regulation episodes. If you haven't listened to those.
For sure. And that can be like, it can be very challenging to like maintain control, like understand what's happening, because oftentimes our emotions feed off of the situation and the environment and what's going on. And so when a kiddo becomes dysregulated, oftentimes it's very easy for us to become dysregulated.
Yeah.
And when they have big emotional moments, it can be very challenging to maintain this kind of like level of response. But it is something, and it takes a lot of practice. But it's so important because I have been the perpetrator many times and have also witnessed it many, many times that like it is the adult's reaction to the situation. And I'm lumping myself in here. It is our reaction as the adult that amplifies a situation when we could have resolved it. And so we have to be really careful because we could be unintentionally adding fuel, like I said earlier, adding fuel to that fire. So it is really important because we have to recognize that what we do directly affects the kiddo. And like they will often feed on us. Like in that example of the little less than 2-year-old, they look to us for how do I handle the situation? How do I like respond in this moment? Like, what do I do? And if we are the way that we respond can completely shape the whole exchange and the whole interaction.
I know I've heard several stories from different people and like kind of seen as well, when like kids like knock over a glass like in their house or something. And then if a parent is very reactionary and like yells at them, well then even on like later on in life, like if they knock over a glass again, it's like immediate like panic on the kid's face because they experienced something negative that was a reaction to them the first time it happened. So as soon as they do it again, it's like, oh my goodness, I've done the worst thing in the world. Like this is really, really bad. And in hindsight, it's not bad. It's really not that bad. We can all clean up a glass. And I think we all probably have things like that we could think of that have happened to us, whether it's at school or things like that.
Yeah.
And like, those are the things that we need to make sure we're being aware of. We don't want to instill like that feeling of panic to our kids and our patients because of how we reacted.
Yeah.
To the moment.
For sure.
Because in like their future interactions, if something like that happens again, they may react in the same way that they felt when you reacted to them.
Yeah.
That was a lot of words, but I feel like that made sense.
Yes, I understand. You're like creating our responses to people can really shape their own self-confidence.
Yeah.
And their own feelings of like self-efficacy.
Mm-hmm. It's like that ripple effect.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing too I wanted to mention, because this is something that is hard. It is very hard. But even kiddos who like can be physically aggressive, it's still important to like use this type of technique where like if a kiddo, I mean, it happened like yesterday. I had a kiddo who was hitting me, but it's so important to like take stock of the situation and not respond immediately because oftentimes what happens, which makes sense because we have just been assaulted, you know, like physically someone, and I say assaulted, I don't mean like, you know, I just mean like somebody has invaded our space and we have been struck. And so our pain signals are going off and like stuff like that. So that is a shock to our nervous system. So our body is immediately going to respond just kind of in its own physiologic processes. But it's really important to try to like maintain this concept of like response because I've done it and I've seen many, many people do it. Somebody hits or they kick or they bite or they pinch and immediately the child is met with, no, stop that. Don't hit, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, but that's not helpful because at no point in time have I ever seen a kid immediately become like calm and immediately. And obedient. I've never seen that happen ever. Never, ever have I seen that response or that reaction to the child's hitting actually resolve the situation in any sort of meaningful way. Instead, what happens is that kid just continues to be upset. And for instance, in this situation yesterday, my kiddo was he wasn't angry. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even frustrated. He was just trying to get my attention. And he doesn't have the words to do that. But if I had reacted very sharply to him instead of thinking, like taking a moment and kind of considering what it was that he was trying to like communicate to me, then it could have been a completely different situation. I could have completely set him off into this big emotional like moment of distress rather than recognizing like, hey, this is what's going on. And actually what wound up happening is he was trying to get my attention and then we were able to use an AAC device to then communicate effectively like what it was that he was wanting and what it was that he was needing. But that takes a lot of practice. And like, I mean, that kiddo in particular has hit me many, 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 many times over the years that I have worked with him at this point. But it's part of the process of like understanding and for him to develop and kind of understand the process of like how to handle the situation, you know? And it's important to recognize that like oftentimes when kids are being aggressive, it is communication. They are communicating with you in the way that they know how. And oftentimes your big reactions could unintentionally be like fueling that because they're recognizing this is when you don't want to like develop this kind of routine of like, okay, this is the moment when someone finally pays attention to me is when I get in this big state of big emotions and big feelings and these big, you know, violent movement, like, you know, hitting or whatever. You don't want to unintentionally develop that. So you have to be it's just very important to like be really intentional and consider like what it is that this kiddo is actually telling you. You know?
I agree. And as clinicians, like this is a really important part of like that therapeutic relationship, like with our patients that we need to be building. And so like if we react in some way to like the first time that they hit us, we may be like slowly destroying that like relationship because like I like to think our patients like trust us
Hopefully
you build that trust up. Or you definitely should be trying to build that trust up. I think therapy sessions should be a safe place between, the clinician and the patient and what you're working on. You should be working together. And if everything is going good and then, patient hits you or pinches you or bites you for whatever reason, and you act in kind of a reactionary way, that could really diminish that relationship that you've worked so hard on. So it's definitely important to make sure you're being intentional about that, because like you said, that patient has hit you multiple times before, but you're able to keep a therapeutic relationship going because you've always made sure to kind of respond to it versus reacting to it. Because there are instances where a patient may not want to see a person because of reactionary behaviors.
Oh, fully. Fully.
And I think it is good when patients can advocate for themselves in that matter, but it's just something we want to be aware of. You know what I mean? Because one little reaction can really diminish either like the progress you've made or that relationship that you've built and that trust that you've built. So
and I want to give another example too of this kinds of responding to emotional distress.
Yeah.
We talked about in a violent situation where a kiddo kind of explodes, their emotions boil over and explode. But then this is also true when kiddos have the opposite. I have known many kids who, when they face really big emotions, they implode. They hide within themselves. And they curl up into balls and they just shut the world out. And I have also seen clinicians react to that by, what's wrong with you? What's happening? What's going on? Why aren't you talking to me? Here, whatever it is that they're trying to do. And it only it only continues to build on this big emotional pile that this kiddo is feeling. And really what they need a lot of times is just space. And quiet and calm. And someone who is gently there to support them through that moment. Rather than the adult becoming freaked out by because sometimes it's jarring. Sometimes it's everything was fine. Well, I thought everything was fine. And then suddenly kiddo was not fine. We're playing a game, we're running around, we're having a good time. And then something happens that triggers the kid. Kid just shuts down so fast. And you're just what in the world happened? And your brain is kind of sent reeling. So, that's happened to me several times. And I'm just what just happened? But it takes a minute. It's important to take that moment for you to kind of think about what just happened and consider what's going on, to then be able to respond in a way that is, compassionate and hopefully supportive. That's the goal.
I think therapists definitely will often have good intentions of wanting to fix a problem really quickly.
Yes,
in those moments, whether it's, and I'm not just harping on videos and stuff, but you don't want to just try to throw a bunch of solutions at the patient. So whether it's pulling up YouTube really quickly or giving them bubbles or hurrying up and pulling all these items out, it can really be overwhelming as well. I've found it better, especially for the patients who I did develop a really good therapeutic relationship with. And I actually feel like I really understood what kind of got to them, what helped them. Those are the patients that whenever it first started happening, I just kind of sat with them, sat back, observed, took everything in, made sure they were safe, of course, but kind of took everything in and was just kind of there for them through the moment. And then when that trust got built, I was able to kind of learn more about them and then give them the things they needed. But I wouldn't have learned that if I wouldn't have sat through those hard moments, if that makes sense. If I would have just been throwing stuff at them. And by throwing, I mean giving them different materials, different resources, thinking that I was trying to help, but not doing that pause and reflecting and hey, how can I help here? Because I feel like I found a lot of growth by sitting there, giving my patient space, learning about them, and then showing them hey, I'm here for you, even when it was hard.
And proving to them that you are there. Because I love that, because I feel like sometimes people forget, especially clinicians, I feel like we are sometimes so burdened by feeling like we're on the clock, right? We only have so long with a person, with a client, with a patient, with whoever it is. We feel so burdened by a time constraint that we forget that time can be such a valuable asset during a situation like this.
Yeah.
Allowing someone, and this is just true of all people, not just children, but like allowing someone the time to move through their feelings, to move through the situation, to move through the experience can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And so there have been occasions where like it's been both ways. And now I'm like really am careful not to kind of intervene to like be too forward with other people. But there have been moments when like my kiddo is having a really big moment and they're having a lot going on, and other people with the best of intentions are like, do you need this? Do you need that? Do you need this? Do you need that? And I'm like, we're okay. My kiddo just needs some space. You just need some time to deal with what they're doing with. And it'll be like, it's okay. Just kind of take a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that like, I think sometimes it is that kind of burden of like feeling like you're on a timetable.
Yeah, definitely.
But then I know also that like some people are just, we're always looking for the magic pill. That's like, what's the one thing that's going to be our easy fix and our well, I mean, not easy, but like our quick fix to this really hard problem. And sometimes there's just not one. Like, I mean, I hate to like burst the bubble, but like sometimes there's just not an easy, quick answer.
Right.
And it just does take time for it to kind of work its way out.
I think I'm thinking about like this one specific patient, which we both know, but I feel like I grew with him so much was that like when I first started seeing him, I was actually still a student in grad school, but he kind of grew with me and I grew with him definitely. But he had plenty of hard times, and I definitely saw ways that other people did it that I didn't really fully agree with at the beginning of my time with him. But they also had those time constraints on them, and they were really focused on those time constraints, and they were really focused on the things that he wasn't doing. And so a lot of it happened to be like, okay, your 30 minutes is up. Like, we've got to get you out of here. Like, call mom, get him. Let's carry him out of here if we have to, like all of the things. Whereas once I finally started seeing him more and more, I realized if I could just like sit in there with him, if we were in a treatment room where nobody was getting hurt, we could just sit through it. And those were some really hard days. I mean, there were like desks being toppled over sometimes, really hard days. But it got to the point of sometimes even mom would come in and me and her would both sit near him or by the door with the door open, like whatever we needed to do for him to process what he needed. And after a while, you know, I really felt like I finally built that therapeutic relationship with him where he was able to like tell me when he needed space or tell me when he needed to lay his head down, or he was able to tell mom afterwards, like, I didn't have a good day today, but it's okay. Like, well, I want to come back next week, stuff like that. And I feel like that's the strongest therapeutic relationship I've ever had, like with so much trust and stuff built that eventually, you know, we had great sessions as far as like data goes and all that. He actually graduated speech eventually, just to like throw that out there. But it didn't go without having its bad days too. Like we would still have bad days randomly. And I didn't always have a solution to it because they were not always the same answers. It was sometimes just sitting beside him, as much as it like broke my heart because I just wanted to fix it for him. But I just think that's kind of an example of what it can be like. And it can be so impactful on you as a therapist too, if you can just take the time to, I don't know, give your patient the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For sure.
I kind of ranted a little bit.
No, it's okay. I was getting a little emotional thinking about this friend.
Same.
He is a very special kiddo to me. I'm feeling pretty like, just lately, I'm feeling pretty like sentimental and like emotional just because I am coming to the end of my time and at this place. And so I'm like this past week, I've had to like tell all of my families that I'm leaving in a month.
Yeah.
And that has been a very big challenge because, and it's those kiddos like who you're describing. Some of the kiddos I feel the closest to are the kiddos who we have struggled together.
Yeah.
Like we have like sat through those hard moments, sat through those big, challenging emotional times. And it's like, those are the kiddos that's like your relationship is forged in the fire.
Yeah.
Of like, this is hard.
And that's like what I want to like encourage clinicians so much for is like, it is so worth it.
It is.
Because like when I like in my career one day, like I don't think I will forget about this patient that we're talking about.
Oh, for sure.
I think I will remember him forever because I took that time to build that relationship and gave him that time that he needed. I barely even remember what our goals used to be. Like I couldn't tell you. We worked on R for a while before he graduated. I remember that much. But I will remember that. I will remember that by the end of my career. But I will definitely always remember like he was that patient who taught me how to sit with him. Yeah. And like wait with him. And that was a lot. That meant a lot to me. But it brings me a lot of happiness as well. And I definitely wish all clinicians could feel that moment of like, it is worth it to sit through this, no matter how hard it is, no matter what happens, no matter if you get kicked or hit a few times, as long as you are safe. Yeah. It's just such a worth moment.
It really is. Some things, I'll tell you, and now I'm like considering, now I'm just having like a walk down memory lane.
That's fine.
Like the kiddo that I was talking about earlier who like was hitting me yesterday. Yeah. This same kiddo is one of those kiddos for me who like, we have had hard days. We have had some very challenging moments. And he is one of those kids who like, sometimes you just have to sit through the experience, but then he so wants you there. Like he's so comforted by your presence when you have like developed that like relationship. And it's so funny because sometimes something can happen and he can have a big emotional moment. And then after it's over, he just comes and he just lays on you and he just like lounges on you because he's just having a hard time in that moment. But then you've been there and you have shown him that like, I'm here with you. Like this is a hard moment, but I'm here. I may not be doing anything more than just keeping you safe and, attempting like, modeling regulation strategies and whatever. But I'm here and I'm present. And so then after that, he'll like come and lay on you. And I had a point and I forgot what it was. I was going somewhere with it. Oh, but then like, because of that, he and I have the first person he ever said bye to was me. Yeah. Not his mama. Not his not the other clinicians, not his like siblings. The first person he said bye to was me. Like that is not lost on me. Ooh, I'm gonna like tear up and start crying. But it's not lost on me that like this is why it's so important.
It really is.
To like develop these relationships and like allow kiddos this. I'm sorry. I'm like,
no, it's okay.
I'm like feeling all of my sentimental feelings, but, that's why it is so important. Like these skills are so important for us to have as clinicians. Yeah. So that we can support these kids because big things can happen. Yeah. If we are there to support the development of these things.
I truly think if you as a clinician can shift your focus to focusing on these things, and on this episode, I think we're just gonna be able to talk about pausing, responding, reacting. Yeah. But if you can literally focus on just those things during a session, you're going to be able to build such a good relationship with your patients. Yeah. And I think it'll help your mindset while you're at work. It'll help your mindset for your sessions. Yeah. Because then you're not worried about all the extra stuff.
And I think it's important to like, what helps me in the, like, feel confident to like take the time. Make that mental shift is that these days, this may be a controversial statement, but these days, like my main focus as a clinician, as a human person is not every single detail of a goal that's written in a plan of care. Right. My main focus is supporting a child. Yeah. That is my goal. That is my main focus. And so I am not shy. Well, I'm not shy. I'm not afraid to like set all that other stuff aside, set aside the data, set aside the assist levels, set aside the activities, to support a kid if that's what the moment calls for.
Right.
Because my ultimate goal is to have a healthy and safe child.
Right. And you're never going to get to those goals, though, if you don't develop that stuff first. And I think that's what I noticed, too.
Exactly.
And I think I learned that with that patient I've been talking about is because I was still a student, I was very much like, you've got to do these goals.
Yeah.
And then I realized, like, he's never going to do this with me.
Yeah.
It is going to lead to frustration every single time.
Yeah.
Until me and him get on the same page.
Yeah.
And become like, have that relationship.
Yeah.
Then we can start working on it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
For sure. And
it's just so important.
I will say, he had some, I do remember this kiddo very well. And he did have some really hard speech goals.
He really
like his goals were like they, and I don't, that's like, he had hard goals for him.
Well,
like,
I mean,
they were challenging.
This kiddo, he was like 9 when he came to us, and he was scoring at like 21 plus in language level.
Yeah.
He was with us for other things.
Yeah. But like those things, and for like a kiddo like him, like
it had a lot of high demand.
Right. It was very challenging for him, and he was very aware of how hard it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a big trigger. If like, you know that you're going to have this really hard task, but then you don't feel safe to fail.
Yeah.
Or you don't feel safe that like someone is going to be supportive of you in this, in during these big emotions that you're going to have, because it's hard.
It is hard.
And like doing hard things is hard.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of confidence, and it takes a lot of like grit and resiliency to like do those things.
Yeah.
And you need a safe, supportive environment in order to be able to like even feel capable of trying.
Yeah.
And so he definitely needed like, he needed you to like sit there and cultivate a safe space and cultivate this trust and this relationship with him.
Yeah. I feel like that is where like my passion for this job has come from. Though, at this point, once I learned how to shift my focus and all of that, like that is where my passion and drive for this job comes from. I mean, I love seeing our progress for our kids. I love seeing a kid meet their goals, but developing those relationships and giving those kids their safe space to me is like highest priority. Yeah. And it has really helped also, I will say, like with my own like burnout and stuff, you know, like when that's my focus, I don't feel like I let myself down.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's less about what I did, more about like, was I there?
Yeah. And you don't walk away from a session feeling like you didn't do anything.
Right. And I'm a huge advocate for any kid that gets labeled as the challenging kid or the hard kid. They have my heart. For sure. I'm like, I want to meet that kid. I agree. I want to come sit with that kid every single session. Yeah. That is where my heart is. I agree. And I think if we can all, as a, I don't know, profession, shift our mindset, then we can all be there to help these challenging kids or these hard kids. Yeah. And then teach parents how to do that as well. Yeah. Because parents love their kids so much. They do. And they need to hear that hope and stuff from us. They do. We need to be a good resource for them. For sure. I agree. Because we also, I feel like with all of our more challenging, I'm going to do air quotes here, patients, those are also the relationships I've built stronger with the parents as well. 100%. Like, you know their name, you know how to talk to them. They respect you. Like, you can see the respect change whenever you have a good relationship with their kid. Yeah. And I think that is so important as well. Fully. Yeah. Some of the like best conversations that I've ever had, like deepest conversations with parents, in and of itself we could have a whole like, the whole episode on like parent relationships, like and kind of doing what that all kind of entails and stuff. But yeah, I agree. Many of those conversations that have been the most rewarding for me as a clinician have been with those kiddos that are often labeled as like the hard kiddos or the challenging kiddos. But parents respect the fact that like, baby, I'm here with you. Yeah. Like, I am right here. Like, I am not going to shy away from your kid. This is what you deal with every day. Yeah. And so, and who am I to sit here and be like, I can't deal with it for an hour? Like, no. Mm-mm. This is a challenge that you are having, and I'm here to like support you in that however I can. I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm not going to like, I'm not going to be cowed. That's not the word. Coward? Not coward. What's the word? I don't know.
Anyway, basically, I'm not going to like back down from this, because it is challenging. It is a challenging situation. Obviously, the kid is challenged. The kid is going through major challenges.
Right.
The kid is not challenging. The kid is having challenges.
Yes.
And so like, they're hard, and they respect you for that. Like, they're the ones who, again, not to brag, but it is important that we understand like the impact of that parent that we are having on the parents, because I've had many, many families tell me how like I'm one of the only people that understands their kid, or I'm one of the only people who like they feel like really gets it, or I'm like I've heard so many times like I'm the only person who will like actually sit there and like work through a situation with the family.
Yeah.
Because you take the time to have those conversations and work and support them and like be there for them.
Yeah.
And it means so much. They really need that. Does. They need it.
And they don't forget it either. No. I think we think like, oh, who are we to them? But they remember it. Yeah. Patients remember us. And
they do.
They feel that. And I was even thinking about that whenever you're talking about your kiddo who like will like lean on you and stuff. I still feel like I still have enough of a relationship with that patient of like when I'm in a room with him, because I very periodically will see him, he'll still give me a little lean and I'm like, oh, you still trust me. Yeah. And it's just like the sweetest little reminder.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
They do.
That was sweet.
One thing that happened. Okay, I'm gonna try not to cry.
Of course.
And then we'll have to wrap up this episode and do a part 2. But because I have been on my journey of saying my farewells to my kids, and one of the kiddos that I have worked with. This will be my therapy win of the week.
Okay.
One of my kiddos that I have had to say farewell to is a kid that I have worked with for over 3 years. He has been coming to us for over 3 years. And for probably 2 of those years, like it was me and him pretty like consistently. Like he was my kiddo and he went through some very big life changes that were very traumatic and very hard. And it was him and me. And so we had some really cool, like fun activities together. And like I found one of the things that we had done. And it was because he was having some pretty intense psychosocial things happening. We were, at this point, it was 2 years ago. No, it was 3 years ago. We had done an activity where we had written down some happy memories, things that we can look back on and reminisce about to give us a moment of happiness when we were having a hard day or a hard moment. And, but over the past year, so that happened, like we had done that activity 3 years ago, right? But in the past year, I haven't worked with him as much, like really not much at all, because I had a different kiddo who needed me more. A different kiddo who came at that same time, who needed my skill set more than that kiddo did at that point, because he just, because of how he had progressed in things. And so because of that, I hadn't worked with this same kid in about a year, but I had the opportunity last week to work with him again. And I took the opportunity because I found that activity that we did from 3 years ago. And I gave it to him. He looked at it and he started crying, thinking about those things from 3 years ago and the moment in his life that he was, where he was 3 years ago. And when I told him that I was leaving, he got really upset. And I haven't seen this kid consistently in about a year, in at least 8 months. But he was still so touched by the things that I had done with him that it just like, obviously affects me in a very big way. So they don't forget. They remember. And they love us just as much as we love them. If we take the time to like practice and build these relationships with these kids. And so that was my therapy win of the week, is this precious kiddo. I I don't know, just that moment
Yeah.
of having, you know, those really touching relationships and
Yeah.
that are lasting.
These kids will like change your lives
Fully.
if you let them.
Fully.
But you have to see that potential.
Yeah.
In them.
I love
my
it so
only
much.
win though right now is moving more towards in my admin role. I don't get to see my kiddos as often, but I love when I get to come to specifically the clinic that you're at, and the kiddos who I did see in the past will come up to that window, like the check-in window, and still tap on it and like point at me and like get me to come give them like a knuckle or a high five. And I'm like, they do still remember. So I just feel like that kind of goes on with that. And it's just so impactful.
They do.
Of like, I don't know how you remember me.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for that. Like, I felt seen, you know, by those older kiddos who anywhere else would probably be too cool for us.
It's true. It's true.
But they love us.
They do.
And we definitely love them. And so.
Yeah. I love them so much.
Yeah. I love this job.
I do too. I love what I do. I love being able to like, it is such a privilege.
It is.
To be able to be in a position where you can meet so many amazing kids, their families. Oh,
it really is crazy.
I just love it. I'm like, this has been my life recently. Just like being so like emotional all the time.
It's a good reflection. It's a good reflection.
It is. And it's like, it's very sweet to have those moments where you're like, oh yeah, like this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. Through all the hard times, through all the challenging situations, through all of the garbage that comes from dealing with all of the things that are in therapy that aren't therapy itself, administrative junk and like insurance junk and like there's always things that muck it up and like make things not super fun. But then you have moments like this and you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what I do this for. You know?
Yeah. I do.
So
please share with us, like, if y'all have any stories.
Yeah. For sure.
If you just want to, like, share a little tidbits.
Tell us about if you're a parent, tell us about the therapy clinicians who you've built these relationships with and you, like, you know, have had these moments with. And if you're a clinician, what's your therapy win of the week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can find us on Instagram at the.co-treat. That's going to be the easiest way. And we'll be back.
Yep.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.